Good morning and welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for November 23rd, 2021. As we get started today, I was looking at the minutes from our last meeting, November 10th, 2021, and there's just one correction that I'd like to propose, and that is with respect to items number 6 and 7, which is reflecting Orzel Energy Solutions. The vote, as reflected in the minutes, state that the vote was unanimous. I would like to state for the record, Commissioner Richard did vote in favor of approving both applications, but he made clear that he was opposed to the assessment of a civil penalty for both violations of the retail supply licenses for electric and gas. Is that correct, Commissioner Richard?
Yeah, I was going to propose to change the minutes, but
with that correction to the minutes, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. There are 14 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is a notice of change in ownership and new trade name from Susquehanna Energy Advisors, Inc. Item number 2 is an application for a license to supply electricity from Beeson and Associates, Inc. Items 3, 4, 5, and 6 are updated standard offer service rates from Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, Delmarva Power and Light Company, Potomac Electric Power Company, and the Potomac Edison Company. Item number 7 is a notice of customer assignment from Liberty Power Maryland LLC to Direct Energy Services LLC. Item number 8 is a notice of new trade name from MP2 Energy NE LLC. Items number 9 to 11 are applications for certification of geothermal heating and cooling renewable energy facilities from Mark Parks, Nick Trianfo, and Randy Comer. Item number 10 is a revised tariff pages from Verizon Maryland LLC, correcting tariff changes approved on June 1, 2021. Item number 13 is a notice of participation in financing arrangements from PEG Bandwidth MD LLC and Unity National LLC. And finally, item number 14 consists of revised tariff pages from MCI Metro Access Transmission Services LLC, DBA Verizon Access Transmission Services, correcting tariff changes approved on June 1, 2021.
Thank you. Seeing no questions from the commission, I would move that with respect to item number 1, that we note the filings. With respect to item number 2, that we grant the company Beeson and Associates a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland, limited to broker services for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. That we direct the company to provide marketing materials specific to its Maryland operations to the commission staff 30 days prior to utilization of the materials in Maryland, and direct the company to file notice of the commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in its application. With respect to item number 3, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of December 1st, 2021. With respect to item number 4, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of June 1st, 2022 for residential and type 1 customers, and an effective date of December 1st, 2021 for type 2 customers. With respect to item number 5, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of June 1st, 2022 for residential and type 1 customers, and an effective date of December 1st, 2021 for type 2 customers. With respect to item number 6, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of December 1st, 2021. With respect to item number 7, I move that we note the filing. With respect to item number 8, I move that we note the trade name. With respect to item number 9, I move that we approve the application of Mr. Mark Parks and issue a renewable energy facility certification and estimate savings estimate. And this applies to actually items 9, 10, and 11. So I'll start over. I move that we approve the respective applications of Mr. Mark Parks, Mr. Nick Trianfo, and Mr. Randy Comer, and issue a renewable energy facility certification numbers and energy savings estimates. Direct the applicants to establish a REC account with PJM GATS within 30 days and file a geothermal and thermal biomass generation report with the commission within 1 week of each recording of generation data with GATS of RECs created, and direct the applicants to file notice with the commission within 30 days of any change to the information in their respective applications. With respect to item number 12, I move that we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of November 23rd, 2021. With respect to item number 13, I move that we note the applicant's participation in the financing arrangements of their parent company and affiliates. And with respect to item number 14, I move that we accept the revised tariffs for filing with an effective date of November 30th, 2021. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Aye.
Commissioner Linton,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
and Commissioner Richard. I vote aye. The motions are approved. Mr. Secretary, the administrative agenda, please.
Mr. Chairman, item number 14 is deferred from a prior meeting at the time of use rates proposal from Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, Inc. On this item for staff, we have David Hoppick and Jim Greger. For the cooperative, Mark McDougall and Eugene Bradford, as well as Lizelle Rory, Alec Patil, Ralph Zarumba, and also for Office of People's Counsel, Bill Fields.
Good morning. I do have one correction I'd like to begin with. Please turn to page 3 of staff's comments. There you should see table 1, and there are a number of notes below table 1. The final note says schedules LP-TOU and T have distribution demand charges, but not distribution volumetric charges. That should read schedules T-TOU and T-NSWC-TOU have distribution demand charges, but not distribution volumetric charges. Thank you. So that does not impact staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Hoppick.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. David Hoppick on behalf of staff. Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, or SMECO, has filed proposed standard author service time of use rates. The time of use rate options correspond to existing rate classes other than street lighting. The summer peak time for these rates is 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. and the winter peak periods are 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Under SMECO's proposal, only the SOS volumetric rates are time of use. All SOS demand rates and distribution rates are unchanged. As explained in staff's written comments, staff, OPC, and SMECO held discussions regarding net metering and the proposed time of use rates and reporting and evaluation. SMECO will update the time of use rates when it updates its existing SOS rates. As part of its annual filings regarding the TOU rates, SMECO will explain if the TOU rate classes should be separated in the SOS rate setting process and have their own power purchase costs adjustment true-up mechanism. Staff recommends that as part of SMECO's customer education, that it include an example of a structural loser in the sample bill impact analyses it provides. Additionally, staff recommends that SMECO remove a proposed tariff language addition to rider net metering that is no longer applicable. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the proposed filing with an effective date of January 18th, 2022, subject to staff's recommendations, and require SMECO to file clean copies of its tariff. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hoppick. Office of People's Counsel.
Your Honor.
Now, Mr. Fields, we could barely hear you. There might be a microphone issue.
Working any better?
Oh, that got worse. Oh, there we go. There we go. Nope.
Sorry about that. William Fields for the Council.
Yeah, Mr. Fields, we heard you, and then you're freezing.
Question.
Perhaps if-
Uh, We support the filing and support the recommended, the staff recommendations as well. I'm having some questions, assuming that you were able to hear me.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. We heard the most important part that you support the application there. We'll turn to counsel for the cooperative. Mr. McDougall, you're on mute. We cannot hear you. Nothing. No volume from Smecco.
Commissioners, this is Eugene Bradford with SMECO. Am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear, Mr. Bradford.
Perhaps if the commission will give us just a minute, Mr. McDougall could come to my office and we could be in the same office here.
That sounds good. Mr. McDougall, put on your running shoes. We'll see you in a second.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my running shoes work, I think.
Good. You sound clear, Mr. McDougall.
Well, very good. Anyhow, I want to first thank the commission staff for working with us so closely over the past few months and issuing what I thought was a very thoughtful and complete bug sheet. I also would like to thank Mr. Fields from the Office of People's Counsel for his assistance in this matter as well. With me on the phone today, as you know, is Mr. Bradford. We also have Lizelle Rory, who is SMECO's Economic Services Director, and Messrs. Alok Patel and Ralph Zarumba, who are both consultants with Black and Veatch. Black and Veatch was the consulting group that helped us put together our time of use filing. I want to say, first of all, that SMECO agrees with staff's recommendations, the reporting requirements that staff and OPC and SMECO agreed to earlier this month. And we are available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. We'll begin with questions from Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. McDougall. I wanted to ask you about the nature of your confidential filing. Why a confidential filing on this time of use rate?
Well, the confidential portion of it, there are a couple of reasons for the confidential portion. One is that it describes with some specificity the purchasing practices and procedures that SMECO uses to compile its portfolio, its power portfolio. If it also discusses some of the components of that. If they were made public, I think there is some potential that that information could be used to SMECO's detriment in the cost of its power portfolio. So we wanted to keep that. We want to keep that confidential.
So can I stop you there?
Yes.
I believe SMECO shares with its members, its cooperative members, the kind of processes and nature of its purchasing, its power purchasing processes.
Not with the specificity that was in this filing, and that's why we wanted to keep that confidential. The other reason we wanted to keep it confidential was
Could you have on that point, could you have put a more generic description in and still have had an effective filing, or do you think that's not so? Here's the point I'm getting to, and here's why I want to have this discussion. I think there's a tendency towards the utilities to continue to make stuff confidential that's not. And that's not a good thing, in my opinion. We ought to be as transparent as possible. The public deserves to have as much information as possible, and the appearance of a lack of transparency is as bad as a lack of transparency, in my opinion. So, could you have done something that didn't cause you to go into a confidential filing that still was just as effective?
Well, we did want to provide the commission with as much information as we believed would be helpful to the commission in making its decision. That included some of the confidential information. But we did make a public version of the filing as well. Where I was headed with this was that Black and Veatch had used a proprietary study for helping us determine our appropriate time of use, seasons and hours and that sort of thing. I've got Black and Veatch on the phone, but I will say that we asked them whether or not should be kept confidential, and they say yes, and we simply honored their request.
Well, the nature of this discussion is such that at least some message from at least one commissioner is going out there saying, we want as much transparency as possible in these filings. And I don't think it serves the public well. And I want the utilities to all understand that a lack of transparency for minuscule proprietary items is not a good thing. It's not. And there's a tendency towards, I've seen stuff come across our desk in filings that is confidential that never should be confidential. And it causes us problems with having discussions. It causes us problems with going into closed session. It's overboard, and utilities are tending to go overboard with this confidential stuff. And I think it needs to be minimized.
In the future, Commissioner O'Donnell, we will look at the nature of our filings much more closely, and we will be as open as possible.
All right, fair enough. Thank you for that response. I do have another question for you, and it deals with your outreach and education program. So you're going to collect that in your rates, right? You're going to recover that expenditure in your rates?
That's correct.
Are you expensing that, or are you amortizing that outlay?
I haven't talked to our accountants about it, but it would seem to me just as a knee-jerk reaction that it would be an expense. So in some future rate case, if those expenses fell within the test year, they would be recovered in the rates that were approved by the commission in a future rate case.
All right, so your information outputs regarding smart meters and energy web portals and demand response programs and Empower, that's all expense. Is that true?
Typically, communications is all expense.
On an annual basis?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I would move that we accept the proposed tariff filing with an effective date of January 18th, 2022, and direct Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative to file clean copies of the tariff incorporating staff's recommendations regarding customer outreach and provider NM tariff. Vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Clinton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard. Aye. I vote aye. The motion is approved. The final item today, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 16 is a request for billing waiver from the Potomac Electric Power Company and Delmarva Power and Light Company. On this item for staff, we have Drew McAuliffe and James Greger. For PHI, Matthew Seekers and Walter Steffi. And for Office of People's Counsel, Nikki Wiggins.
Thank you. Good morning. We'll begin with staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Drew McAuliffe on behalf of staff. On October 22nd, 2021, the Potomac Electric Power Company, or PEPCO, and Delmarva Power and Light Company, or DPL, filed a request for limited waivers of their billing cycle provisions. The companies are requesting these waivers because they are conducting upgrades to their billing and data management systems. The upgrades will cause some customers to have more billing days included on their January 2022 bill than a typical billing period because of the time it will take to implement the upgrades. This will cause impacted customers' January bills to increase. However, their February bill will have a corresponding decrease. This will impact approximately 22% of both PEPCO and DPL customers. In order to alleviate the bill increase for January, PEPCO and DPL will suspend dunning and disconnection activities from January 2022 through April 2022. Also, staff requested that PEPCO and DPL suspend late payment charges for the impacted customers' January bills, and the companies have agreed. The companies will notify customers of the larger than normal January bills through various mediums such as direct mailing and email. Staff has read OPC's comments on this matter and supports each of OPC's recommendations. Staff recommends that the Commission suspend Section 5A and Section IVA of PEPCO and DPL's tariffs respectively for the January and February 2022 billing cycles. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to counsel for Maryland Office of People's Counsel.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Nikki Wiggins on behalf of OPC. As we stated in our filed comment, OPC does not oppose the company's request, provided that the Commission imposes two conditions on the limited tariff waivers to protect Maryland consumers. I'll just go over those briefly. First, the Commission should require that the companies sufficiently communicate the billing cycle changes, and particularly the effect that the cycle changes will have on bill amounts in January and February. We appreciate and agree with the company's stated intention to send out communications over multiple channels. Our concern, though, is that in the sample communications that were provided, neither mentioned the projected impact to bills for customers. We believe the higher bills are going to be the biggest consequence and concern for the customers of the companies, so it should be explicitly stated and should be conspicuously placed on any messaging going out, preferably in the subject line or the first line of any communication. This would increase the probability that as many customers as possible will receive advance notice of potentially higher bills and will be able to make arrangements. We also recommend that the company include information in at least some of their communications that would be helpful to addressing the larger than expected bills. They mentioned flexible payments for arrearages in their response to our data requests. That would be helpful for customers to know. OPC's second request is that the Commission should accept the company's representation that they'll waive late fees on January bills and make it a condition of approval. The higher than expected January bills will present a hardship to many of the company's customers who are already facing significantly higher energy costs this winter. Households that are primarily heated by electricity are expected to see a 6% increase in energy expenditures over last winter. And for households that are heated by natural gas, that increase will be 30%. And it's not just energy. Consumer price index is ticking up, which indicates that inflation is going to be a concern for a lot of households in the coming months as well. In the near term, consumer financials are also going to be impacted by higher residential spending due to the holidays and increased consumer credit outstanding as the economy recovers from the pandemic. So we anticipate that Maryland residents are going to be carefully budgeting their spending over the next couple of months during the time when this billing disruption is going to take place. And it may not be feasible for all of them to be able to pay these largely unanticipated higher than usual January bills on time. And for that reason as well, we're requesting that the waiver of late fees be clearly communicated up front so that the worry and concern created by bills that customers anticipate they won't be able to pay on time won't be a burden imposed on them because the company chose to implement a billing system change in a difficult season for them. So for these reasons, OPC is asking that if the commission approves the tariff waivers, that they impose the conditions requiring sufficient communication about the higher bills and the waiver of late fees. We thank you for your consideration, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Wiggins. We'll turn to counsel for PHI.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matthew Seeger is appearing for Pepco and Delmarva Power. Appearing with me is Mr. Walter Steffi. We have nothing to add to staff's buck sheet, and we do not have any issues with the recommendations that have been put forth by the Office of People's Counsel, and we are available if you have any questions.
Thank you.
We'll begin with questions from Commissioner Herman.
Ms. Wiggins, I have two questions. Your first recommendation is that they say up front what is it that you want them to say up front? Your bill is anticipated to go up $36.20, or, you know, what is it that you're asking?
Yeah, we would request that at least some notice that bill amounts will be impacted is included. I don't know if it's feasible for them to put the specific dollar amount, but like I said, the sample communications that we took a look at didn't have a reference at all to the fact that bills might be a little higher in January for some customers. So opening somewhere along the lines of, we have a billing system change that is anticipated to have an impact on your billing amounts that may make your January bill a little higher than anticipated. Something along those lines.
Okay,
just
all
to give
right. So
notice.
we're not that, yeah, I got, that's fine. You know, that sort of makes sense, you know, like you have more days on your January bill, so your bill's likely to be higher, but it'll be lower in February. Okay. Number two, do you have any concerns that by saying that, don't worry, you know, you're not going to we're going to waive late fees, that people are going to say, huh, I don't have to pay my January bill? I mean, and that really gets people into big trouble. And that, you know, I'm always concerned when we tell people in advance that, you know, or it might even be interpreted that somebody says, oh, I don't have to worry about paying my bill on time because I don't have to pay a late fee. And then that can snowball into all sorts of problems. So does that raise any red flags for you?
I think if the company contextualizes that messaging within, you know, just a listing of resources that are available or a listing of actions that they're taking to make sure that the January bills don't have a negative impact on consumer finances, I think it would be less likely to cause that type of reaction. We know in some of their communications, they did mention that they're suspending dunning and they're suspending disconnections. And if they kind of just contextualize it within that kind of this suite of things that we're doing to approach this billing disruption, I don't think that it's going to have a very negative outcome on customers and their choice to pay their bills. And on the other hand, the risk that, you know, not communicating this up front would create, you know, concern and hardship for customers that don't realize that they have the option of just waiting until their February bill is a little less to pay their January bill if it's necessary for them. I think the risk of that
so they
is
should
also
wait
harmful.
and pay. That doesn't make sense to me, because then you're saying that don't worry about paying in January, pay in February, and then they're paying double their bill. And if they're payment challenged, then they're paying double the bill. So I'm not quite sure I understand the logic there.
Ideally, what we'd be seeing is, well, I can't speak for all customers, of course, but you know, ideally, if there's just a portion of their balance that they're not able to address in January, you know, it could be addressed in the fact that they're not going to have to pay as high a bill in February. And that would be what our intention would be, to let them know that, you know, if you can't feasibly fit a higher than expected budget or bill into your budget in January, there's going to be an opportunity to address it. And also there's an opportunity for flexible payment arrangements that the company mentioned for arrearages as well.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Wiggins, I have similar concerns to that of Commissioner Herman and the fact that it appears that OPC is requesting that the utility proactively advertise that there will be no late fees in the month of January. That's your position, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
My concern is very similar to Commissioner Herman's in the sense that you send that signal out that effectively it's a utility bill holiday, that you will get customers, residential customers into trouble. They'll just see that no late fees. That means I don't have to pay, means I don't have to pay when I have the ability to do so. And in fact, might actually make sense. And anytime you could hold on to your cash and not pay the utility without any type of penalty or repercussion, you would be silly not to take advantage of the utility float. Meanwhile, throughout the pandemic, we have emphasized time and time again to communicate with your utility to the extent that you are payment troubled. And in this case, it doesn't appear that the utility is opposed to waiving late fees in January. The concern that I have, and I believe Commissioner Herman shares, is the fact that they would have to proactively market and advertise and communicate the fact that they won't charge a late fee. Where I would say if the customer can't pay, they pick up the phone call, they speak to the utility, and the utility will say, we're not charging a late fee in January. So I can't support OPC's proposal as is with respect to that. It sounds as if counsel for PHI is okay with your, well, they said they're okay with the whole ball of wax here, but they're okay with the communications aspect. Mr. Seegers, does PHI have the ability to do this type of bill messaging that we hear OPC and staff in support of?
We do have the ability, Your Honor. In terms of the bill impacts of, we do not have the ability to include a customer-specific bill impact, of course. What we would do is we would take what would be the average bill impact, which is indicated on one of the data responses attached to staff's buck sheet. That is number 16, where for Pepco customers, the estimated impact for Pepco customers is about $32.67. And for Delmarva Power customers, it will be approximately $35.47. And that is the number that we would include as the average bill impact on the communication, Your Honor.
Okay, I would not expect the utility to be able to customize the bill impact, projected bill impact for every single residential customer. So those averages seem appropriate based on the number of additional days in the billing cycle, as well as the projected costs as well. Obviously, we're on the doorstep of December, and this is going to be effective in January. Do you have enough time to make these changes to the December bills that will be sent out probably very soon?
Yes, we do, Your Honor. I will defer to Mr. Walt Steffi in terms of how the communications are going to go out, but the communications are, in fact, being drafted right now.
Okay.
So, I do believe that we have enough time to incorporate any necessary changes into those communications. And
can we be a little more clear about the communications? Are these messages on the actual Pepco and DPL bills, or are they inserts in the envelope, or are they emails?
I believe it will be on all of the above approach, Your Honor. And I'll ask Mr. Steffi to see if he can to fill in some more details on the exact methods we're going to use.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Steffi. Mr. Steffi, we cannot hear you. Everybody's having trouble today. Mr. Steffi, can you give me the thumbs up if you could hear me? Okay.
Heard Matt. Oh,
Mr. Steffi. There we go. There we go. We could hear you now. Oh, he can't hear me though. Okay.
Oh.
No, that It's not working yet. Okay, that's thumbs up. You can't hear me though. Mr.
Any better?
Steffi, I think your mic's on now.
Yeah, is that better?
That's better. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Your microphone, we could hear you now, but if you could get closer, it's very, very faint.
How's that?
Good, good. Just speak up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I turned the volume up as well. Sorry for that technical issue. So our intention is to include a bill message in the December, January, and February bills. Now, the draft message did not include the dollar amount, but we will adjust that to edit that message to also include the dollar amount. We'll also be including email and text messages, and some of those will have tailored language specific to the customer segments that they're addressing. For example, auto pay customers will have specific language around, their debit amount could be deducted a couple days later. So that's our communication plan at this time.
Thank you. So the bill messaging will actually be on the actual hard copy statements.
That's correct.
Okay. I have been working with PHI now for the better part of 3 years to improve the way that it communicates the products, the charges, the fees, the taxes, and the entire layout. And frankly, I've been getting a song and dance for the better part of 3 years as to why Delmarva and PHI bills cannot be improved. And you have bills from SMECO and BGE, which are the top of the class as far as I'm concerned. And I understand that the PHI bills will be going through some type of a refresh in 2023. And that refresh cannot come soon enough because we need to be able to communicate quickly. And you're telling me today that PHI will be able to communicate quickly to Maryland customers on these December, January, and February bills. So, Mr. Steffi, you're telling me that today that you could craft particular messaging just to your Maryland utilities and not to the Delaware, New Jersey, and District of Columbia utilities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And am I under the correct assumption that this rollout for this bill improvement will continue to be in 2023?
That's correct. That's unrelated to this topic, though, right?
I'm sorry?
That's unrelated to this topic of this billing window extension.
Well, yes and no. I would disagree. The fact that the utility has continued to struggle in communications with its customers is concerning to this commissioner. The fact that we have a very case-specific situation before us right now with respect to the amendments of the bill cycle, I'm happy on one hand that PEPCO could implement this on the fly. But in other respects, PEPCO says, well, we can't make changes for a couple of years, where your sister company in BGE made these changes years and years ago. I would ask that your group continue to work with regulatory and the bill people to see what improvements can be made, because this is important. $32 in the winter, and this will come unexpected to your customers. We know about it today, but your customers don't. We'll have to be proactive here. So I agree with Ms. Wiggins and item number 1. And I agree with the waiver of late fees in January, but I don't seek to market that and publicize that information. That's all I have. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let me ask the company, Mr. Seegers, just to make sure I understand, you're only waiving late fees for the month of January. Is that for the entire bill, or is it just for the increased fee associated with the billing change?
It's my understanding that would be for the entire bill, Your Honor. Is that correct, Mr. Steffi?
So we will waive any late payment charges associated to any unpaid balance related to the January bill.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify if it was the entire bill or the increase due to the billing change only. So
So it would be anything that would remain outstanding after the amount due for the January bill. Is that clear?
It's the entire bill, Your Honor.
that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
I had to process what you were trying to tell me, Mr. Steffi. So, having said that, think I tend to agree with the chairman and Commissioner Herman in that we had, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a statewide elected official say to the 6 million citizens of Maryland, don't pay your utility bills. Well, that may have sounded good for consumption purposes politically, but it wasn't very wise financially. You know, even if you can afford to pay them, he said, don't pay them, just wait. Well, that put a great burden on those who were paying their bills and the utilities, in my opinion. It wasn't very wise. And similarly here, I don't think we should necessarily be advertising this, but let me ask the OPC, the fact that these late fees are going to be waived regardless, does that at least give you some comfort, even if we don't advertise it, that the consumer protections will be in place and that nobody's going to get hammered with late fees?
Yes, Your Honor. Our priority is certainly that the fees are waived. We would like them to be communicated up front, but as long as they are waived and the customers do have that relief, we think that will be a great protection to the consumers.
Okay, very good. That gives me some solidification of my position on this. So I support your first recommendation from OPC, but not necessarily the second, although I do support the waiving of late fees associated with this matter.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It almost feels like deja vu all over again for me. I feel like I've seen a situation like this before, and I'm a bit concerned about the timing of this proposed billing system change. I personally think the estimated amount of potential bill increase is very conservative, especially for customers who are electric heating customers. We have seen situations like this before where just a couple of cold days can result in a bill that's significantly higher than what has been any data that's been used to make an estimate from prior years. So I'm curious in response to, and this is for the company, in response to question number 1 that was posed by OPC, you noted that extending beyond January 2022 would result in $4 million per month of expenses to continue using in order to maintain the required support services. So help me to understand where that figure comes from. Just why is that going to happen?
Basically, the intent of this upgrade is to replace outdated hardware and to upgrade our software, which would become out of support. So it's a significantly large project. I mean, if you think about the monthly costs to run the project, it's about $4 million a month to have the staffing that you need in order to be able to make those changes. So extending that staffing and those services by a month would increase the cost of the project by about $4 million. Does that answer your question?
Speak up.
Could you hear me?
Yeah, we are back on it.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the end of your response? We had a couple of audio issues here.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay now?
It's a little better, yes.
Speak up.
Just speak loudly.
Sure. Basically, this is a fairly large project. We're replacing all of our hardware and moving it to the cloud, as well as upgrading our software to maintain vendor support. It's a pretty significant project, and the cost of running the project is $4 million a month for the staffing and technical resources that are needed to accomplish that. So extending it by any length of time would add to the cost by about that $4 million mark.
So it sounds as though the company had planned, I guess, to move forward with the project around this time of the year, and that plan's been in place for a while.
Actually, initially, when the project was first proposed, our intention was to have a fall launch, a September or October launch. However, once we got into the technical requirements of the project, it wasn't feasible for us to accomplish that. And we needed to push it out by a short amount of time in order to be able to accomplish all the tasks that needed to be done and to maintain a stable system.
So you noted that earlier, thank you for the response. In the comments earlier, and I don't remember which party's comments it was, but I know I read that of your 21 billing cycles, you expected 5 of them to be more adversely impacted than the others in terms of the amount of usage that would show up in the January bill. Do you have any ideas to the number of customers in those in that billing cycle that would be electric heating customers?
I do not have that information. I don't believe we actually have a separate rate for electric heating customers, so I really don't have any way of knowing that.
Okay, I'm more concerned about the increased usage that those customers will have. I mean, that's just going to happen because it's January. But now we're going to have more days of that increased usage in one bill.
And
So,
hopefully the saving grace would be that they would have a corresponding decrease in the number of days in February.
right, hopefully, assuming it warms up a little bit, we should see a decrease.
Well, it's the impact of this is for 2 months. So for January, they would have an increase in the number of days in their bill, and for February, they would have a corresponding decrease in the number of days in their bill. So they should see an impact not only from a weather-related factor, but also from the number of days.
Okay. I think that's all the questions that I have at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no additional questions, Ms. Wiggins, the majority of the commission does not support your proactive marketing of the waiver, so that's off the table. Although it appears that Mr. Seegers has agreed to the communications channels that you've outlined, so that will be a condition of this motion today. So I move that we suspend Section 5A and Section 4A of the company's respective tariffs for the January and February 2022 billing cycles. The vote begins with Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Mr. Chairman, I would vote no. I'm really concerned that the impacts of the customers, that even with the notice, it would be significant, and payment plans and late fees are not going to be solutions enough for those customers. Even if they get payment plans, those are plans that could last for an extended period of time. So I think the timing for this, it should have been, I understand it's $4 million a month, but that's something that the company has had some knowledge about and could have been addressed. This whole matter could have been done a different way. I think as a commission, we've seen this kind of challenge before with companies making changes to their billing systems and the resulting impacts that it had on consumers. And it can be a very difficult thing for a lot of customers to deal with, even with the use of payment plans. So,
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to vote aye, but I want to explain my vote. I too share the concerns of Commissioner Linton with regard to the company's timing on this filing. It's impeccably bad in the middle of a winter heating season, right after Christmas, at a time of high inflation, at a time of high energy costs. You know, I listened to an analyst this morning who said the opening of the spigots on the strategic oil reserves of 50 million barrels is enough to cover the consumption in the United States for 1/2 of one day. It's going to have negligible effect. Gasoline prices are through the roof, energy prices are through the roof, and people are going to be hurting shortly. You go to the grocery store, and anybody who's shopped lately in the grocery store will see it. So the timing is impeccably bad. However, in the long run, it's going to cost the consumers more money if we don't do this. So I'm voting aye, but with some reservations that I share Commissioner Linton's concern.
Commissioner Richard.
Yeah, I'm also going to vote no. I thought Commissioner Linton explained the vote very well, and I agree this was a terrible time of year to do this. But I do want to thank the company for working with OPC on trying to come up with appropriate communications. I think I trust the OPC to come up with the right kinds of communications that are needed to make sure that citizens know how to handle, well, in this case, would know to handle this type of a situation. And I certainly don't believe myself that customers are trying to game the system or somehow trying to evade paying their bills. So again, I applaud the company for working with OPC on this, and hopefully when this, well, I guess it is going to pass, but that we can get appropriate messaging out there. But my vote is no.
Thank you. Commissioner Linton's concerns do not fall on deaf ears, or at least my deaf ears, and I don't think they should be minimized. $4 million a month is not insignificant. But a bill cycle change, well, ordinarily, I think in normal times, would not be a big deal. We are still in the midst of a pandemic. We have a record number of people in payment plans. We've seen the numbers. We get the numbers every month from the utilities. The arrearage amounts are enormous for some customers that have gotten into the hole recently. So another $32 or $35 for Delmarva customers who have an ability to pay right now is concerning to say the least. I haven't had a tremendous amount of confidence in Pepco and DPL of late, particularly with respect to their bills, and I've let my concerns be known with executives at your utility. You do need to do better. I'm not going to hold that against the utility. In this case, Mr. Steffi said this is a separate matter. I respectfully disagree. Communications with your customers, whether it be adding more days to a bill cycle or some other significant change to the product and services that you're selling, is to be taken seriously. And the fact that the utility hasn't taken this seriously, at least for the past 4 years, is concerning here. That said, I will vote to support the motion that I just made, and hope the utility can communicate this clearly to customers, particularly those who are in need. So I vote aye with a vote of 3-2. The motion is approved. I hope everybody has a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving. This meeting is now adjourned.